Yeah, you know it's getting real now. You know it's getting real now. You know we weren't making things up. We wasn't just tripping. Oh, Stephanie White got on camera and said it. She admitted they blew it. There's no size on the team. There's not enough size. Stephanie White finally admitted her, Amber Cox, Kelly Crosskoff in the front office blew it again for a second straight offseason. They blew it in an offseason in which 80% of the players were free agents. This is nasty work for Caitlyn Clark, man.
Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White walked straight up to the microphone and said what nobody in the front office had the courage to admit, and it may go down as the most damaging self-inflicted wound in modern WNBA history. After months of mounting criticism from analysts, scouts, and longtime basketball observers over a series of deeply puzzling roster decisions, White finally broke the silence. She didn't hedge. She didn't spin. She looked directly into the cameras and confirmed what sharp basketball minds had been saying all along. Her words were precise, alarming, and impossible to walk back. She acknowledged that this team fundamentally lacks size, a brutal indictment of the very roster her front office constructed around her. And then she went further, describing the salary figures handed out by her own organization as, in her words, baffling. That is not routine coach speak. That is a head coach publicly breaking from her front office in real time. Welcome to WNBA Spark, the sharpest, most analytically honest basketball platform on the internet. If you came here for carefully managed narratives that protect comfortable executives, this is not your destination. Today we are dissecting White's stunning dual admission, the structural crisis buried inside Indiana's guard-heavy rotation, the financial decisions quietly threatening Caitlyn Clark's championship ceiling, and the increasingly dangerous culture of personal branding over winning that appears to be taking root inside that locker room. Let's begin where the damage truly started: roster construction. This past offseason, the Indiana Fever operated from a position of extraordinary leverage. Nearly 80% of the league entered free agency, and Indiana held perhaps the single greatest recruiting advantage any franchise has possessed in years: the chance to play alongside Caitlyn Clark, the most magnetic offensive force the sport has ever seen. Basic basketball geometry tells you what that opportunity demands. When your point guard draws automatic double teams the instant she crosses half court, you surround her with length. You build a roster of 6'4" wings who can punish collapsing defenses and shoot cleanly over the top of rotations. Instead, the Fever front office moved in the opposite direction entirely, drafting Raven Johnson, a 5'9" guard, and reinforcing a rotation already stacked with players standing between 5'8" and 5'9". Now, staring down the size and physicality of Eastern Conference defenses, that decision is no longer theoretical. The consequences are arriving, and they are arriving fast.
What rotation you'd like to see out there, or do you figure those out on the fly?
No, I mean, I think we've started to sketch some together, what we'd like to see, who we'd like to see play with each other in an ideal, situation. We've started to put some of those together. New York also presents some challenges because of their size and their length, and we're not very big.
You just realized that? You just realized that New York.
Pay close attention to what Stephanie White said publicly about the state of this roster. When pressed about managing rotations and preparing for elite competition, she stated without hesitation, New York also presents some challenges because of their size and their length, and we are not very big. We are not very big. That is not a coach carefully protecting her organization's reputation. That is a devastatingly candid acknowledgement of a structurally broken roster. The head coach just stood in front of every camera in that room and confirmed that general manager Lynn Dunn and Kelly Crosskoff fundamentally failed to equip her with the physical tools required to compete against a team built like the Liberty. New York is deploying a rotation that features Brianna Stewart at 6'4", Jonquil Jones at 6'6", and Sabrina Ionescu at 6'6". They are an imposing, length-driven defensive machine, engineered to collapse passing lanes and erase driving angles, and Indiana is being forced to answer that challenge with a backcourt rotation constructed almost entirely of undersized guards. But the absence of size is only one dimension of this organizational crisis. Because Stephanie White did not stop at questioning her roster's height. She went further, and what she said next should alarm every single person invested in this franchise. During a media availability centered on the new CBA, White looked directly into the cameras and used one specific word that every Fever supporter needs to burn into their memory: baffling. She described the salary figures her own front office committed to this offseason as baffling. She called it crazy. Those were her precise words, completely unfiltered. The head coach of the Indiana Fever is going on the record and openly admitting she cannot make sense of the financial commitments the people above her made to the roster she is now expected to win with. That is not a minor internal disagreement quietly handled behind closed doors. That is an organizational fracture playing out in plain sight, in real time, with cameras rolling.
Size, you should have known that. They got Satu at 6'4", Brianna Stewart at 6'4", Jonquel Jones at 6'6", 6'7". I'm telling, didn't they, brother? The Lady Phoebe 6'4", 7-footers coming off the bench. Like, bruh, they're.
Let me give you the exact context, because the word baffling does not come from a coach who's comfortable with her front office's direction. It comes from someone staring at the numbers in real time and not liking what she finds. Kelsey Mitchell received a $1.4 million Supermax contract. Aliyah Boston locked in a 4-year, $6.3 million extension. Sophie Cunningham was brought back at $665,000. Lexi Hall got an extension, and Tasha Harris was added as a veteran presence. Each of those moves, viewed individually, carries a reasonable argument behind it. But when your head coach steps to the microphone and publicly describes her own roster's salary structure as baffling, she's communicating two things with absolute clarity. First, she had little to no influence over those contract figures. Second, she is genuinely worried that the money already committed leaves her without the flexibility to build the team she actually needs.
Caitlyn Clark, you got Sophie and Lexi on the wing. That's cool. Outside of that, these guards is little as hell. We got a bunch of little 5'8", 5'7" point guard, two shooting guards running around outside of Caitlyn Clark. It doesn't make sense.
Nobody in mainstream media is connecting why this directly threatens Caitlyn Clark's future. Clark is approaching the final stretch of her rookie contract. Next offseason, she becomes eligible for a massive extension under the new designated player provision, worth several million dollars annually. By aggressively committing multi-year money to a crowded guard rotation right now, this front office has already eaten into the exact cap space they will desperately need to build properly around Clark when that extension arrives. When Stephanie White calls the numbers baffling, she's essentially exposing that this front office spent aggressively in year 1 of the new CBA without any coherent vision for year 2. You cannot afford a front office learning on the job during the prime years of a generational talent. You need a master plan, and right now that plan appears completely absent. This brings us to the most alarming takeaway from White's media session. When you combine a front office that ignored size in the draft with one that distributed baffling contracts, you manufacture a pressure cooker environment where coaches feel forced to publicly lower expectations. With a talent like Clark, the organizational standard must be uncompromising. Championship windows are brutally short. Yet listen carefully to the corporate language White is already using to manage expectations before a single game has been played.
We're going to challenge us to be the best that we can be, but at the end of the day, we're all humans who love this game, who love to be around each other, who value shared experience. And when I think back on my career, it's not always about winning the championships and hanging the banners and getting the rings. It's about those days where we struggled in practice and the journey with your teammates and the relationships that you have to this day because of that journey that you shared.
White looked directly into the camera and stated, "When I think back on my career, it is not always about winning championships and hanging banners and getting rings. It is about those days where we struggled in practice and the journey with your teammates." Let's be completely ruthless and objective here. When you employ the greatest defensive weapon this sport has ever produced, it is absolutely about winning championships. Fans are paying premium prices. Networks are investing billions. Players are sacrificing their physical prime for one singular purpose: a trophy. When a head coach publicly suggests that banners matter less than practice memories before a single game is played, that is a glaring red flag. It signals the coaching staff is already constructing a psychological escape route for a disappointing season. She knows the roster is undersized, she knows the cap is compromised, and rather than demanding excellence to overcome those failures, she is retreating into friendship.
When we told y'all it made no sense, some of the moves y'all was making, y'all called us complainers, all types of stuff. So now when it's real and the live bullets is going on, we not using size as an excuse. I'm not letting you use that. Absolutely.
Caitlyn Clark did not spend her entire offseason rebuilding her shooting mechanics and conditioning her body for a brutal 44-game season to settle for a nice journey. She is here to dominate. She is here to win championships. The core Clark, Mitchell, and Boston remains genuinely talented, and a deep playoff run is absolutely still within reach. But the unforced errors baked into this roster construction will create serious problems. And when those problems surface on the court, Stephanie White will be the one standing at that microphone answering for them, not the executive sitting comfortably in the luxury suites. The preseason is here. The real verdict on whether these roster decisions were brilliant or catastrophic is about to be delivered on the court where it actually matters. A huge thank you to our loyal members for supporting honest, uncompromising basketball analysis. We are building the sharpest community on the internet, and your support makes this possible. Smash subscribe if you want analysis that reads between the lines. Drop your prediction in the comments below. Did Stephanie White just publicly expose her front office? Hit the notification bell because the evaluations start now.